Liftoff in 3, 2, 1.
Hey there, and welcome to the Body Mind Index. I'm your host, Jerry Pujols, and today I'm going to be doing a little monologue for you to give you an update as to how things have gone over the last year in my quest for better health. To report, I'm down 80 pounds. I actually got down to about 80 pounds in my first 6 months. So I want to tell you a little bit about that, how I've accomplished it. Hang in there with me. I'll have a lot of information for you as to how I did this. And at the end, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what my goals are and what I've been able to accomplish in the last year. So you might want to stick around for a little bit of that. But I'm humble that you're here and willing to listen to a little bit of my journey, and hopefully it helps you in some way. I don't intend to be an expert in weight loss. I've battled my entire life with ups and downs, yo-yos, every diet imaginable since I was 15 years old. I've just come across something that has finally set me free in a way that I've never experienced before, and I am enjoying the process, enjoying the grind, because there's a little bit of grind to anything worthwhile, but I'm very present with it, and I'm truly happy to be here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So, you know, I got to this place of kind of a healthier weight, but I'm still very much in the process. I haven't arrived at where I want to be, but I'm not making the goal the end all be all. I'm making the journey the most important thing. And in that journey, in those 80 pounds of weight loss, there have been ups and downs, plateaus, things that most of us have experienced. And I'm going to share with you how this has impacted me. So here's a photo of, you know, me and my 3 boys. And, you know, one of the examples of when I was up in weight. And that was kind of something that, as I said earlier, I've struggled with. But at the same time, this was my pinnacle. I got to over 280 pounds. So I felt like I was rapidly approaching that 300 pound mark, which for me was outside of the realm of reality. I never thought it would come to that, but I think COVID had a little bit to do with that, like it did for most of us. We hunkered down. We were literally eating all these comforting foods to help us deal with the outside external stresses that were affecting us in our everyday life. And we, some of us, starting with me, didn't even know that was happening, but it was very much happening while I was in the mode of COVID. I also realized that I was becoming more immobile. I'm going to show you some other pictures of me with my ups and downs. Here's a picture of me when I was selling real estate, how I kind of came off the weight again. And I just, again, want to keep showing you these images so you get an idea of some of the battles that I've had. I've also gotten thin enough to where I've done some commercial modeling. When I was back, not now, people, calm it down. It was back when I was 17, 18 years old. I was in New York City, and I had the opportunity to do some modeling and some off-Broadway acting. And here's one of my pictures. This photo was on literally almost every single bus stop in New York City around 1986. And memories. I was actually at Studio 54 during the release of the video Thriller, and that was a thrilling experience, and I've had a lot of fun, but it's always been with the battle of the yo-yo and the ups and downs. So again, during COVID, I hit my all-time high, and here's a photo of me just in the throes of stress, anger, disappointment, but primarily pain. I was in so much pain, you guys. I had two lower bulged discs in my lower back, and those things were debilitating. I couldn't hardly walk to the end of the street. And with that being said, I also had a ton of inflammation, so pain throughout my body, and that really affected my ability to move. And just body ache everywhere. My body just really, really ached. So with that being said, I just remember my mother's mother, my grandmother, who in her 40s was already complaining about getting older. She was complaining about body ache. And that really, really scared me, because I realized in my 50s that I'd already beat the odds by 10 years. So I sort of felt like, hey, I got 10 years more than her. I should be grateful, and I should start hunkering down and realizing that this is the way it's going to be forever. So I sort of started to prepare for aging in my mid to early 50s. And I can't believe I got there, but it just felt like it was the thing. But what happened next was interesting, because what happened next was I had to go for my doctor's appointment. So for my physical, every year I've been pretty good. Maybe I'll skip a year. I go every couple of years for a physical. So I went to my doctor's appointment, and lo and behold, I sit down in the chair. She checks my blood pressure. My blood pressure is high, unusually high for a first visit. So she asked me to come back the next day. Well, guess what? I topped the scales at over 280 pounds. Do you think it was going to be better the next day? I knew deep down inside that it was not going to be any better the next day. I knew what was going to come next. I knew that I was going to be prescribed statins, and I knew that would be the beginning of the end for me. That would be sort of settling into not the healthcare system, what people are calling now the sick care system, so I can continue to get sick and they can stabilize my sickness. And at one point I decided, wait a minute, I have to take control of this. So I started doing a lot of research. And in doing the research, I came across this book by Dr. Joel Ferman. And I had read this many years back, and it rekindled something in me. It kind of told me, wait a minute, there is a path to health without statins, without medication, and that might lead to weight loss, which might lead to some movement, or maybe, just maybe, less pain, because I knew that a lot of that pain had to do with that inflammation, bulging disc in the lower back, and all the things that weight just exacerbate and make way worse. So shout out to Dr. Joel Ferman, because then I was introduced to his G-bombs. And what are G-bombs? Here they are. Let me go through it with you. So let me go back to where I was in my notes. So G-bombs are greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and nuts. And with that being said, last for S, seeds. And that kind of changed the game for me. I followed this book to the letter for my first 90 days. People, in 90 days, I lost 40 pounds. What happened after I lost 40 pounds is all of a sudden I had less pain throughout my body, and I started moving more. I like hiking, so I started hiking more. And the one thing I want to disappoint some of you workout fanatics, weight loss comes from what you put in your mouth. It does not come from the time that you spend in a gym or working out. A good friend of mine once said, you cannot outrun your diet. You cannot outrun it. So I knew that diet was 90% of everything. Working out was just for the heart and for movement and just to make your overall well-being improve. But for me, working out is also for mental health. It gives me great clarity, mental space. And for that reason, I love movement. And the fact that for a moment, I thought that was going to end forever was probably one of the saddest moments and the lowest points in my life. So I'm going in to the things that I eat now. So here is me eating a great bowl of salad, but I'm here to tell you that bowl is nothing compared to the real bowls of salad that I eat. Because the bowls of salad that I eat, or that I was definitely eating during the first 90 days, they were twice the size of my head. I have a huge head. So with that being said, these salad bowls were huge. But the one thing that I'm going to tell you is, for most of us who don't like eating salad or struggle with the chewing of a lot of salad and cruciferous and vegetables and raw things like that, it's because we haven't built this muscle. And if we haven't built this muscle, it's very annoying to just sit there and chew and chew and chew and chew. Here's why we haven't built that muscle, because some of us are actually eating at McDonald's, In-N-Out Burger, Taco Bell foods that are processed and require almost no chewing. So when you eat a hamburger, you think about this. When you eat a hamburger, you literally only have to chew it once, twice, or maybe, just maybe 3 times, and it'll go down. That's the magic of processed foods. They require very little chewing, and we haven't built these muscles. Once you take in the salads, cruciferous vegetables, and raw vegetables for a course of 30, 60, or 90 days, these muscles get strong, and you'll see that you'll be able to eat a lot of salad in a very short period of time. It's very natural. And by the way, I've taken on a vegan lifestyle, but for me, this is not for everybody, but for me, I've removed salt, oil, sugar. Let me put up the word cloud: salt, oil, sugar, processed foods, caffeine, alcohol, all these things, and animal products of any kind, dairy or meat. And in removing all those things, I've literally cleansed my palate. By cleansing my palate, I don't crave the things that I used to crave. People can eat pizzas in front of me. It doesn't affect me because I have a cleansed palate. However, I am a food addict. A food addict is somebody that before he goes to bed, he chooses food over a cocktail. He chooses food over anything to calm down. So if you find yourself needing food to calm down, needing food to go to bed, needing food, consider that you may very well be a food addict. If you're obese or morbidly obese, as I was, you may very well be a food addict. Do not resist the word addict. If you embrace the word addict, it might just set you free. It really might just set you free. Because once we take ownership, then we know we can do something about it. You can do something about it. I'm not saying any of this is easy. This is hard. But I'm a year beyond it, and I'll tell you, it's easy now. It's really easy for me to say it's easy now. The work that I put in was really, really hard. So don't kid yourself. So here's what happened beyond this. I ran into a very special person while doing my research. I ran into a woman named Chef AJ. So I started watching Chef AJ's podcast. Chef AJ has been a vegan for a long time, has eaten an SOS-free lifestyle with no alcohol. I don't know if Chef AJ drinks caffeine, honestly. I doubt it because she understands that caffeine is a drug. But Chef AJ Live and her podcast literally changed the game for me, because she brought me back to things that Joel Ferman was saying, and then introduced me to other people. Like, for example, Dr. Goldhammer, who is the founder and CEO of the True Health Care Center up in Santa Rosa, California, which is not far away from where I live. And I've been able to stay at his place. I've also had him as a guest on a podcast, and I'm going to put that link down in the show notes so you can watch what Dr. Goldhammer says. Dr. Goldhammer has also been a guest in the Rich Roll podcast, which I love to watch. Rich Roll is an ultra athlete, ultra marathoner, and has fascinating guests on his podcast. But the one that he did with Dr. Goldhammer got over 3 million views. There is something about intermittent fasting, water fasting, and juice fasting that Dr. Goldhammer helps people with that has changed people's lives. I have not done any water fasting. I have done juice fasting in the past, and I have done intermittent fasting, which I'm doing right now. And it's really helping me change the game as well, and how I see food and how many calories I take in a day. So I love the fact that I got to meet him personally. Beyond that, Chef AJ introduced me to Dr. Doug Lisle. Dr. Doug Lisle, again, I'll put his episode on my show notes, was a guest on the Body Mind Index, and he is a psychologist from an evolution's perspective. So he really understands why we're wired the way that we are and why we do what we do. Him and Dr. Goldhammer wrote this book, The Pleasure Trap, another game changer for me. The Pleasure Trap allowed me to understand what the processed food companies were able to do to really improve revenue by getting us hooked on the food. Remember the old proverbial, you can't just eat one? Well, that was created by design. When you combine sugar, oil, and salt, They're right. You can't just eat one. You have to keep eating. It is a dopamine hit that hits you every single time from your brain, and it just makes you feel good. It's a pleasure trap. It's just like sex, just like alcohol, just like porn, just like all the things that hurt us and affect us in a negative way are exploited by our evolution and how we are addicted to pleasure. So we like to move towards pleasure, move away from pain. I'm asking you to consider moving towards pain and away from pleasure. It just takes only a period of time. I always say, and I said this, I was a guest at Chef AJ's podcast. I'll put that episode on the show notes as well. But on that episode, I explained that time is my friend. The more that time goes by from my removal of sugar, oil, and salt, caffeine, because I have a hyper nervous system. As you can see, I'm not caffeinated, but I'm like this by nature. If you're like this, type A by nature, caffeine is something you should consider removing from your life. But if you're a calming force, you're a calm, even keel individual, coffee might not just affect, it might not affect you negatively. It doesn't affect my wife negatively. She has a cup a day. She might even have 2 cups. It doesn't keep her from falling asleep at night. It definitely does me. So I wanted to share that with you. So again, remember that all of these foods were put together in the 1970s by chemists who were able to figure out what attracted us to the foods. And when you're going through a grocery store, realize that to be healthy, there are very few aisles that you should be walking through. Very few. When I go to the grocery store now, 80% of the grocery store for me is not of interest. 20% though is of high interest. And I get in and out of a grocery store very quickly these days. I will also tell you that for those of you who think that this way of eating is so much more expensive, I will debunk that any day of the week because my grocery bill has gone down by probably 60 to 65% since I started eating this way. So I'm happy to talk to you about that. Please give me comments, questions, show notes. I'll always respond to them. If I can inspire one person to considering healing, then I've done my job. If you're not overweight, and if you disagree with what I say, then all I have to say to you is, you don't understand. If you're overweight and you disagree with what I say, I would say you might not be open-minded or not ready for it, because guess what? I was not ready for this for the larger portion of my life. It's just when I got there, I met myself where I was at, and then I started one step at a time, just like a hike on the John Muir Trail. The one thing that I realize is 95% of people who diet like me gain their weight back within 2 years. That's a horrifying statistic. So for me, I always go back to time is my friend. The longer I stick to it, the better my odds are. I have 1 year behind me. I need to keep going. Now, on this slide, I want to show you kind of where I'm at. So I started over here as the heavier set guy. I'm moving to the middle silhouette, which is right in the middle. And I'm moving towards the more svelte person who's lighter on their feet and doing the things that he loves to do. But again, to do this, you have to walk through fire. There is some pain in all this. It doesn't come free. Those drugs that people are taking right now to lose weight are going to have effects. And those effects are not necessarily positive. So magic pills have never been the bullet. Anybody who's entrepreneurial and has ever built a business one brick at a time understands what it takes to build a business. You build a business one brick at a time. You do not skip. You do not hit the lotto. You do not just suddenly get rich. Losing weight is the same thing. You build longevity one brick at a time. So please consider that. Do I measure calories? Do I count calories? Do I measure my food? Absolutely not. Chef AJ taught me to consider what's called nutritionally dense foods over calorically dense foods. Most of us eat calorically dense foods. You know, we have the burgers, the pizza, the things like that, that every bite is just loaded with so many calories that at the end of the day, we're over consuming. So Chef AJ taught me to consider nutritionally dense foods where I can eat all the foods that I want without hitting the caloric max for the daily intake, so one does not continue to gain weight. If anything, you start to go the other way. And then when you combine working out to that, you end up with a more of a deficit by the end of the day, and you end up feeling better. And the next day, the scale starts to show you go in an opposite direction. So it's very exciting. Let me tell you some of the things that I'm doing now. So now, recently, well, not that recent, at my 6-month mark, where I lost the 80 pounds, I tried to summit Mount Whitney in the snow. So I don't advise that for anybody. Mount Whitney is here I am, the lower, my pointer finger needs to be in the right direction. I don't know how to do that very well. So Mount Whitney is the highest point in the lower 48 states. And I wanted to summit it in one day. So you start at 1 o'clock in the morning with a little headlamp and a backpack, and hopefully enough water to make it to the top, enough food to make it there and back. And I didn't calculate my water because all the lakes were frozen at that time. And climbing what was a very steep wall, which is called the chute, I came 1,000 feet from the top, which means that I climbed over 5,000 feet and made it 1,000 feet from the top and realized that it was time to turn around because I had run out of water 3 hours prior. So this has taught me a lot from when I go next time, which will be next year in 2024. But it's something that just a year ago, before I went to that doctor's appointment, before I lost the weight, before I started eating this way, I could not even consider, because please remember what I said at the beginning. I was literally preparing to die. I was not preparing to live. And one thing that I tell my wife now, you guys, our best years are yet to come. I feel like if I'm in my 30s again, and I'm not making that up, I have zero pain in my lower back. I have zero inflammation pain. The other day I did what I call 10 by 10 by 10 by 10, which means that by 10 a.m., I walked 10 miles. Okay, so 10 a.m., I walked 10 miles. Within those 10 miles, I did 10 sets of 10 push-ups. And on my last set of push-ups, I did almost 30 push-ups, which means I did a total of 120 push-ups that day. That is a 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 within a few hours of my day. So for me to even consider that I was ever going to do something so extravagant at 57 years old, not a chance. So consider how much further people can improve and come. And right now, what I'm curious about is how much better can I get? I mean, right now, I'm really curious. I'm really curious if I can do a marathon, because the other day I ran 12 miles. Can I do a marathon? Because the other day I hiked 50 miles. Can I do a marathon? Because the other day before that, I hiked for 12 hours straight without stopping. You know, I just can't help but wonder what I can do. What am I capable of? And I can't help but wonder, you know, I'm really considering ultra marathoning, which is running more than 35 miles. I'm considering the benchmark of 100-mile ultra when I'm 60 years old. What if I come short of that? It's not a problem. What I'm seeing in front of me is just a ton of life. And I have grandkids now. I want to enjoy them. I have a vibrant wife who's very healthy and nutritionally sound. I want to continue to enjoy that. So I want you to consider that for yourself as well. I'm just going to close up by saying, if you found any of this information helpful, please hit the like button. Give us one of these. Look, I can't do this. And please, I humbly ask you to subscribe, because the more people subscribe to this channel, the more I'm able to build this channel, the more affirmation I get that I'm taking a course that might be helpful towards others. I've had people come over to my house to get prepared meals by me. I'm open to one day having guests stay at my property to have meals prepared by us, and for me to teach them how to do this is not as hard as people might think. There just has to be commitment, and there has to be an exhaustion with just being fed up with being sick of being sick. And if you're there, then I really want to hear from you. And if I can help you, I'm here. All right. So thank you so much for watching. I hope the information has been helpful, and have an amazing week. Bye.